Cuba, after running dictator Batista out of the country, Fidel Castro nationalizes sugar plantations owned by American companies. Tensions immediately mount. The U.S. halts all loans to Cuba and breaks off diplomatic ties. Cuba strikes a trade agreement with the USSR. Castro defies Washington, openly courting Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev.
He was setting a very bad example for Latin America. I mean, the idea of this small island standing up to Washington and saying they will no longer be a client state, this was shocking.
The day Eisenhower handed over power to John Kennedy, he also gave him a file called the Bay of Pigs. The plot was hatched by Allen Dulles and Richard Nixon, Eisenhower's vice president and Kennedy's opponent in the 1960 presidential race. Kennedy inherited a plan drawn up by the CIA to invade Cuba and oust Castro by landing at the Bay of Pigs.
He approved it. He was looking for ideas, and one of the ideas he approved was the Bay of Pigs, but it turned out to be the Bay of Pigs.
Kennedy comes, just barely takes office. Goes through his inauguration. He's briefed on the Bay of Pigs. He doesn't like it, but he goes with it, and it turns out to be a disaster.
The CIA sent 1,500 inexperienced Cuban exiles on a suicide mission, hoping Kennedy would cave in and send American air power to back them up. But Kennedy refused, and the operation failed. The CIA laid the entire blame for the Bay of Pigs debacle on his shoulders.
The operation was a failure because it was badly run, period.
I think he went along with it because he didn't have any better ideas, and his staff didn't have any better ideas. So he kept on with what he had.
It was a poorly planned military operation, and the intelligence supporting it was not good.
The idea that a small group of people could come in and somehow they could overthrow a regime, I think, underestimated the popularity of Castro in a significant way.
They expected the Cubans to rally to our side, and they did not. And they just didn't have the right military plan and forces to do the job.
The CIA had said it could be done if the United States was willing to support the insurgents militarily. And at the last moment, the administration decided not to provide military support for the Bay of Pigs insurgents, and it failed.
We were angry about the Bay of Pigs because it failed and because we were really to a considerable degree responsible for the operation. But and there certainly would have been people who were irritated and angry at the president.
They hated Kennedy because he did not support the Bay of Pigs enough, in their opinion, especially with air power.
You can't say CIA liked or disliked something. It's got to be certain people and certain groups that might not have. And I'm sure there were people, case officers and division chiefs and other senior officers, who probably didn't like the president. And why not? He was doing things that they didn't like, so they didn't like him.
Just a month after taking over the White House, John Kennedy and younger brother Robert, U.S. Attorney General, give the CIA full power to get rid of Fidel Castro. Sam Halpern is put in charge of Operation Mongoose. Between the failed landing at the Bay of Pigs in 1961 and John Kennedy's assassination 2 years later, Castro escapes 8 assassination attempts, all organized by the CIA.
Kennedy asked for options on Cuba, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff actually proposed to kill Americans in a covert operation that would be made to appear to be a Cuban attack on U.S. soil as an excuse for going to war against Cuba. And this was properly refused.
The CIA at that time was trying to find ways to deal with Castro.
And whether it was 8 or 80 attempts to assassinate Castro or blow up his cigar or something like that.
I mean, ridiculous things. Planting itching powder in his beard, you know. It was just, these were very feckless kinds of things they were thinking about in order to try to weaken his position.
I think there were 20 or 30 attempts against Castro.
I think 8 sounds a little better. I mean, 25, nobody's that lucky. I mean, somebody's I mean, sooner or later. But you know, Kennedy was obsessed with Castro, Robert Kennedy.
I'm not sure which one was the pusher more than anybody else. We dealt mostly with Bobby rather than with Jack.
John F. Kennedy knew about everything. Robert Kennedy knew about everything.
I could never figure it out what made them so anti-Cuba. The only thing I could think of was their own feelings, their own egotism. There's a problem they couldn't solve, and they never ran up against a problem they couldn't solve. They were always on top of everything, and this one they were not. And there was no way they were going to be on top of it. So everybody along the way, including the entire U.S. government, had to help them get over this problem.
John Kennedy is having a hard time keeping Allen Dulles and the CIA in line. The agency is fast becoming a state within the state. As each new attempt to oust Castro fails, Allen Dulles becomes increasingly intractable. He launches a propaganda campaign against Kennedy, blaming him for all the CIA's failures since the bungled Bay of Pigs operation.
And he's absolutely beside himself. He wishes he could tear the CIA down.
He was so angry, a month before he died, he said, I want to take the CIA and take it apart board by board and scatter it to the winds.
Did you ever see any pieces of CIA? I have never seen any pieces of CIA anywhere. CIA has never been smashed to pieces by anybody.
But the agency